Welcome back, guys. We are taking a look at the AJ-37, also known as the Viggen, which is sitting at a battle rating of 10.3 in rank 6 of the Swedish tech tree. And it is also classified as a strike aircraft, and I kind of think that that is why it gets such a crappy armament loadout. I mean, it is very hard to be consistent with it. But the airframe of the Viggen, along with the engine, allow it to have a top speed that is almost on par with the 11.3 MiG-23s. So it's almost like flying an 11.3 or 11.0 airframe at 10.3. It has great performance. It can pull a crap load of AOA. And honestly, the low speed performance is very surprising. And I think that that's due to the fact that we're looking at a delta wing, maybe a double delta if you really want to call it that. I think it technically is, but I'm not 100% sure. I'm going to call it that anyways. So a double delta with canards and an engine that puts out 15 tons of thrust. What you're going to see in a couple clips of this thing, well, right here is a decent one to show, and that first one with the F5C, or F5E, they're pretty much the same. Anyways, those were showing off the low speed performance, and it can really keep up with most of the planes that you're going to be encountering and get used to fighting F5Cs, because at 10.3 it is like a venereal disease. They are in every game and you cannot escape them. They're on your team, they're on the enemy team. But the Viggen is better than that. Don't worry, it is better. It has a pulse Doppler radar at 10.3, which can be pretty handy. The AIM-9Js, or RB-24J, if you're from Sweden, can be slave to radar. So if you have an enemy that's flaring, it's going to ignore the flares while it is initiating the lock. And since it's a pulse Doppler, it is a little bit more resistant from chaff. And in the very last clip, I did not feel like it was worthy of being in the main part of the video. There's an A5C, and even though he flared, my first missile got flared away. I didn't lose the radar lock, even though he let out a little bit of chaff. Anyways, we need to talk about the substantial issues that come along with the Viggen itself. Now, it's really the better choice, in my opinion, between the J35D and the AJ37, just because you do have the ability to have some flares in this. I mean, it isn't a very small amount, but if you're pretty careful with when you're launching your flares, and if you're aware of the situation and aware of what's going on around you, I guess that's just the same thing. I don't know why I said it twice. You can flare at the correct time. I would highly recommend cutting your afterburner. That's just going to help ensure that your flares are doing their job. And I'm also running a flare priority on my countermeasures, just if anybody is curious. Anyways, the flares make it a better option than the J35D. However, the ACAN M55, when it is mounted so far out on the wing, it becomes incredibly hard to aim. I have kind of managed to get around this by I turned my vertical targeting off and set my convergence to 400 meters to try and at least be a little more accurate and get the cannon to at least fire inwards a little bit, so that it can kind of be in line with my plane. The muzzle velocity is absolutely horrible on the cannon, but when it does make contact with an enemy, it makes short work of them 90% of the time. I just am using the default belts, which is a mix of armor piercing and high explosive rounds, and you don't have any tracers, so get used to that as well. You're never going to know where you're shooting unless you have some rounds go into the dirt. But this plane is kind of a headache. Although it's the better choice, you only have the ability to carry 2 AIM-9Js, and sometimes they do what they just did in that previous clip with that F5, and they'll just ignore flares. And that's usually at shorter ranges within like 1 kilometer or less, I've found. So sometimes they do that. At longer ranges, they're kind of meh. But you only have 2 of them, and that makes the AIM-9J rather inconsistent. I guess that is a pro that the Draken has over the Viggen, is that it can carry 4 AIM-9Js, but this is a Viggen video, not a Draken video. Now, like I said earlier, this plane can pull very hard and can pull a lot of AOA, and I have a maxed out G tolerance and stamina on this crew with a G suit, and I'm still pretty much blacking out every time that I am trying to sustain a turn, and that's just going to happen the whole time. And the G suit is a tier 4 modification, so you are not getting that until you've researched all of your other performance upgrades like your boosters, engine, cover, fuselage, and wings, and then G suit, which makes it even more of a pain train to grind with. I just am still trying to wrap my brain around why they put the G suit in tier 4 of the modifications tree. I will never really understand. But if you can get around the fact that it is going to be a very inconsistent plane, I mean, I have had more 1-kill games with this than the F-15 so far. And the F-15 has been out like a week. And frankly, I'm probably the worst top tier player in all of War Thunder. So it's horribly inconsistent. It's kind of weird to fly at first. The airframe does have a little bit of a learning curve, but when you get used to it, you can do things like this. So, like I said earlier, low speed maneuvers, it's pretty good. The wing does carry a lot of lift with it, but if you have more than 2 guys like this, and somebody, like, I would not do this against 2 F5s, but a Mirage F1C and a JH7 is not as bad. I mean, I still have better performance than both of them, although they have better missiles and better guns, frankly. Just, yeah, it's painful to make this video, guys, but we're doing it. Never again. The next Viggen will be a lot better than this. I just got to keep telling myself that. Anyways, right there, killed the Mirage, and he just happened to be perfectly lined up with my guns, and this is what I was talking about here. So I launched the first missile. Even though he does flare it away, I don't lose my radar lock, and that just allows me to slave the missile to my radar. And, you know, that's not going to happen in every situation, and it's really more useful in head-ons when you have all aspect missiles. But we're gonna wrap the video up there, guys. Thankfully this was a short one and I will not have to suffer any longer. But anyways, if you enjoyed watching, make sure you leave a like down below and subscribe to the channel to see more, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.